Welcome back to the Greatness Everyday podcast, where I help you upgrade your mindset, money, and more so that you can live a great life. In today's episode, I'm going to be sharing about my first cryotherapy experience, talking about what cryotherapy is, some of the benefits, where I went for my session, and give you some information to consider whether it might be right for you to try or not. If you like what you hear today, please, if you want to learn more about what I do, head over to our Greatness Everyday YouTube channel and Instagram page, and let's jump into today's episode. But first, a word from our sponsor. Do you want to learn how to become a successful investor? Do you want to learn why investing is the best way to multiply your money? Discover the answers to these questions and more in the 6 Principles of Successful Investing program that I've created. You will learn what investing is, why investing is the best way to multiply your money, how to develop a top-notch investing mindset, the 6 principles that I've used to grow my net worth 4x, how to create your ultimate investing plan, and how to get started investing. The program is now available at www.6investingprinciples.com. And for people listening here to our podcast, you can use the code PODCAST to get 25% off now. Don't wait, get started with the 6 Principles of Successful Investing program today. So today what we're going to be talking about, like I said before, is my first time experiencing cryotherapy. And I've wanted to try cryotherapy for a long time, but just where I lived, I didn't have access to a cryotherapy clinic or a cryotherapy chamber. So for me, that has been like probably something like 8-9 years that I've wanted to do something like that. Really early when cryotherapy started becoming something that like the average person could do in public, that's when I first heard about it, because I heard about it through the triathlon training that I was doing. When I was in university, we used to do ice baths as well. So we were kind of learning about some of this stuff. And then really when cryotherapy started to get popular in, like, let's say the mainstream, I wanted to try it and I didn't have that opportunity. So for me, I want to start by just talking about what cryotherapy is very briefly. A lot of you, if you're here watching this either on the replay, if you're on Instagram, you're listening to the podcast, you're interested in health and wellness really at all, you most likely know or have some idea what cryotherapy is. And essentially the basics of it is essentially, let's say, cold therapy. So there's a lot of different forms of cryotherapy. And for some people, the first time I ever heard of taking something that's really, really cold and using it as like a health or a medical treatment was when somebody had like a wart and they had it burned off. And it's really funny that we say it was burned off, because the compound that does that is actually liquid nitrogen. And liquid nitrogen is extremely cold. It's in the negative 100 to 200 degrees. So it's really, really cold when you actually look at it. And the idea of burning something off with something that's extremely cold just didn't make sense to me as a logical person that I was. But that's what cryotherapy is. It is used by athletes. It is used by celebrities. It is used to treat, let's say, chronic diseases. And we're trying to kind of dive into it a little bit, just give you that introduction today about what it is, why I wanted to try it, what are some of the benefits, and maybe is it right for you or is it not. So that's essentially what cryotherapy is. And when I really look at why I wanted to try it, well, I'm always one of those people who are always trying to kind of like obviously get better at something and whatever they're doing. But when it comes to health, that is one of my values. If I talk about the top 5 values that I have, personal core values, right? There's no doubt in that number 3 actually is health. For me, that's really important, because we have one life, we've got one body, we've got to treat that well. So health is something, whether it's getting up and going for a run, whether it's doing a workout, whether it's trying to eat, let's say not like obsessing over eating super, super, super healthy, but what I will do is I think that I eat decent, right? So those are some aspects of health that I look at, but there's also some aspects of health that I find are very interesting. And as kind of these technologies come up and they develop and they get better and better, I wonder, can I take advantage of those to help me in the life that I'm living? And cryotherapy is one of those things that really, for me, got me interested. If you know what it is, I mean, the first thing you're going to see is this big, tall chamber. And there are different forms of cryotherapy, like I said before. Sometimes cryotherapy can be involved just with treating a specific point on a body, right? That could be like burning off a wart as an example. Number two would be like one of these big chambers, which is what I experienced. And that's like, we would say partial body cryotherapy from the research that I did. And really the reason that it's not whole body cryotherapy is because you're not fully encapsulated into this like chamber, let's say. So if you go on my Instagram page and you can look at kind of the video that I put out there about my first experience in cryotherapy, you're going to see that my kind of shoulders and above are outside of the chamber. So that means it's partial body cryotherapy. And it's something that, like I said, I wanted to try just to see if it was kind of like one of these things where people are talking about all these benefits, and kind of get my own experience to see whether or not it's something that it helped me, and then also see whether or not it'd be something useful, or is it just kind of the latest rage exciting thing that everybody's doing. So when I was doing a few research on the benefits of cryotherapy, whether it's cryo, whether it is taking ice baths, whether it is doing something else, there's a lot of different benefits out there. Depending on the sources that you're reading, and on the contrary, there's the opposite, just saying it's nothing. So what we're going to do here is dive into some introductory benefits of cryotherapy, look at a little bit of like scientific literature, and see really kind of where is the literature, and what is the literature saying about cryotherapy. So if we look at some of the benefits, right? Ice baths, cold therapy, cryotherapy is definitely all the rage in the past few years. There's a lot of people out there who know who Wim Hof is, right? And the cold therapy treatments that he does, some of the stuff that he's really been able to do as a result of some of the practices that he's done. And he's got a huge following now because of it. And it's something that makes you think like, hey, is there actually something that this guy's talking about? Or is he just some crazy guy that goes and sits in really cold water and does these crazy activities and breathing, etc., and he's just out to lunch type thing? But when you look at some of the benefits, you're going to learn that with cryotherapy, yes, it's getting popular, but there's some great claims and some things that people are saying, reasons people are claiming that you should really try integrating it into your health and wellness routine. So number one is pain relief and muscle healing. And from my experience as an athlete growing up, playing soccer at university, running, we would jump into ice baths right after our hard workouts, or we'd have a cold shower, or we'd jump into a river, something like that, just because, like number one says, it relieves pain and muscle healing. So there's a big process to that, and there's some reasons as to why you'd want to do that as an athlete. Anytime you're working out, you're stressing out your muscles. With the stressing of those muscles that happens, right, they're going to swell. And one of those things that it can do is it can relieve the swelling. It can also help your muscles heal faster as a result of that. So that's one of the benefits of cryotherapy. Benefit number two is there's some people claim that you can actually lose weight from doing cryotherapy. And that's something that when I first started doing the research into this, I thought it was interesting because I never heard of somebody claiming before, kind of in my circle, that you could go ahead and lose weight by going to a cryotherapy chamber. That was something that was new for me. But when I got thinking about it, and I thought about in Canada, we've got these crazy winters. It's very cold. It could be minus 30 or even more. It's cold. It's cold. And when you go outside, you shiver because you're cold and your body's trying to stay warm. So if you look at some of the temperatures that you're exposed to, being minus 100 degrees Celsius or lower in a cryotherapy chamber, well, maybe that makes sense. Maybe if you're that cold for a certain amount of time, you're going to be shivering, and therefore the amount of energy you're using to keep your body warm could potentially result in some weight loss. So that was something that for me, when I heard about that for the first time, was interesting. And I mean, I didn't lose any weight. I only did one session. I'm going to tell you about that session in just a little bit here. But There is some literature out there that says, yes, this could be a potential thing. And I'm going to touch on kind of the opposite of that here after I list out these things. Reduced inflammation, like I talked about, inflammation is one of the best ways to kind of recover if you can control that after a hard workout, after something that you do that is stressful for you. If you can reduce the swelling that you have in your body, it's going to help you recover faster. And cryotherapy, it's suggested, can help with that. Then there are a few others. Like those first three were things that I had heard about or could at least justify and logically reason through. But then there are a few others here that there's claims out there that cryotherapy can help you with, like preventing dementia, preventing and treating cancer, reducing anxiety and depression, improving symptoms of eczema, which is like a skin condition, treating migraine, headaches, and there's other claims as well. Like there are some people that go, and in my experience, I talked to the guy that runs the cryo clinic, and there are some people that actually go to treat their skin to make sure that their skin stays tight and they kind of look fresh. So they're excited about doing that, and that's worth it for them. So there are many different justifications as to why somebody would want to try cryotherapy. Those are some of the benefits. I started looking into some of the more, like, let's say, scientific data, because these claims are great and all, but if I'm going to go ahead and invest my money, I want to make sure that my money is going to something that is actually true and that is actually valid, rather than just kind of some person claiming something. So I did some research and I looked at the Journal of Sports Medicine. In 2014, there was a paper that came out, and I love the title of this because it kind of talks about some of the research that I found and just sums it up quite well. Whole body cryotherapy, empirical evidence and theoretical perspectives. Because when we really look at that, I found through the research that I've done, there are people that are claiming that cryotherapy can do these great things, these wonderful things, but that's a great theory. It's just empirically that data isn't there for the majority, let's say, that supports it. Or because when I was going through the sources I used, for example, there was some group that was tested in one of the Harvard studies, and I'm just going to grab that up here right now. When we look at whole body cryotherapy, and again, we're talking about whole body cryotherapy here, some of the stuff I found was, well, for this one group of runners, it did help in muscle recovery, for example. But then on the opposite, when they tested it with a soccer team at the university, it didn't have any evidence for that. So like you're finding a lot of contradictory evidence. And I think that's because, number one, is cryotherapy, yes, it's been around for a long time, but it's becoming more and more mainstream, and it's becoming more and more popular now. So as something is new, the technology is new, it's developing, you're not going to have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of data to really kind of support what you're looking at. So as this technology develops, as it comes out more and more, I think it's one of those things that we're going to have more empirical or just solid data that's going to suggest and be able to tell us kind of where we're at. But with that title, Empirical Evidence and Theoretical Perspectives, I thought it was fitting to the research and the information that I found. So in my cryotherapy experience, where did I go? Well, like I said, in my area, there's no cryotherapy clinics. And obviously with kind of the past year and a half situation that we've had, we haven't been able to travel too much, depending on what country you live in. For cryotherapy, I was in Halifax, Nova Scotia, on the east coast of Canada for a weekend. I was in there surfing, and I had the opportunity, just kind of with a random search, to actually go to a place called Maritime Cryotherapy, and they opened in Halifax. They've got a beautiful location. I saw it instantly, and I'm like, yes, I'm getting in there. I want to experience this. This is my chance. So I was excited to go there, booked my kind of slot through Instagram, showed up that next morning, and actually got to go into the cryotherapy chamber. When I went in, staff was super friendly. I've got nothing but great things to say about them. We went into the cryotherapy room, kind of gave me a quick rundown of how everything worked, which was much appreciated because let's just say when you're going into something like this for the first time and you're saying my body's going to be exposed to something that's like minus 100 degrees to minus 200 degrees, I mean, I wasn't nervous because I know plenty of people do this all over the place, but it was something for me. I was like, really, what am I doing? And it was something that I had to experience. So we got kind of the rundown, and then he left the room. He told me to kind of strip down into my boxers and put on a robe, put on some gloves, put on some socks, and then put on some like slippers type things. They're like big slipper boots. And for me, went ahead and did that. He came back into the room, and then he started the thing up. It was hooked up to liquid nitrogen, obviously being the cooling effect. And then slowly, liquid nitrogen was released, and you saw the timer or the temperature thermometer just kind of tick down, tick down, tick down. And then it got down to, I think I jumped in around minus 100 degrees Celsius. And then from there, he said, okay, you've got your time. We allow people to go in for 2 minutes, or we allow people to go in for 2.5 minutes. And it kind of based off what your interests are, if you've had cryotherapy experience before, based off whether or not you like the cold or not. I don't know why anybody that doesn't like the cold would be going to a cryotherapy chamber anyway. But for me, I mean, I had done in university cold water baths or ice water baths. I've done those at a university. I've done those kind of homemade in my own tub after a hard workout, like jumping in the rivers if it's really, really cold and running fresh. So for me, I said, let's just do it all. Let's go for the longest time that you're going to let me go into it. And it's going to be something that I'm going to go get the full experience type thing. And one of the things that I found was, as I got in and as it started decreasing and the temperature went down, one of the things for me was, as I regulated my breathing, I felt very comfortable. But when there was times when I wasn't doing that, or I wasn't like talking and engaging with the people that were there, it was one of those things that for me, I found like you noticed the cold. But as it got colder, it went down from minus 100. I think the coldest it got was minus 141 degrees Celsius. And for me, that was something that obviously I had never experienced that. But comparing cryotherapy to an ice bath, I personally found the ice baths were way colder. And the reason being, we're obviously surrounded in ice and a liquid being water. Whereas through cryotherapy, you're going ahead and you're exposed to like a liquid, a vapor, we'd say, liquid nitrogen as it vaporizes. So that's one of the things that through my whole experience, Maritime Cryotherapy was awesome. Their facilities were great. They're super friendly. I was really excited to try it for the first time. It's something that as I go through and look at it, did I really notice it? If I'm being completely honest, I mean, no, I don't think it's truly something that you can experience and say, oh, my life was changed just through one individual session. Maybe that happens for some people, but for me, I wasn't dealing with any big pain issues. I mean, I had surfed the day before, but I wasn't really like super sore outside of that, right? I wasn't dealing with a nagging injury, or I wasn't trying to fix some chronic pain item, right? So I couldn't have that same experience. I was going into it relatively healthy, feeling fresh. But I did think that like during my heavy times of training, so if I look at when I'm training for my Ironman and I'm swimming and I'm biking and I'm running and I'm working out and I'm doing all of these things every single day, a couple workouts, and I'm doing that for 5 to 6 months. Well, I really do believe that incorporating cold water therapy, whether it's cryotherapy, whether it's an ice bath, all of those options is going to be something that I'm going to incorporate in the future. So would I recommend this to people? Number one is I would recommend it to people based off what their interests are. I'd recommend it to people if they are trying to get healthier, just in general, yes. I'd recommend it to people if they're trying to improve their athletic performance. Those are kind of the two areas that I can speak to, and I would recommend it. I would recommend to people to incorporate it in terms of, in part of like a regular routine. For some people, I guess some people come every single week. Some people do every other day. Some people go once a month, and they've got different kind of membership forms that you can set up and kind of go through. And every single month you can come in for your cryotherapy session. You can book more if you need to. And that was one of the things that, like, if I look at being in Halifax, which is 2 hours away from me, the closest city. It's the only one in the Maritime provinces. So for a lot of people, they don't have access to this. I do know that for people in the larger centers, it is becoming something that's more and more popular. It's relatively inexpensive if you actually look at it. I thought I was going to have to pay like $100, $150 or so. I think my session was something around $50, which for me, kind of looking at the investment that I get a return on being healthier because of it, is something that I am willing to pay $50 or whatever the price was for a session. I know they've got membership options as well, which kind of can make the price cheaper for you, but regularly incorporating it into my life is something that if I lived closer, I would definitely do. So where I don't live close to it, it's a couple hours away, I do incorporate cold water therapy into what I do. When I'm training, it could be really simply just turning on for a 5-minute cold shower, going ahead, and when I get back from my heavy, hard runs in the heat, just kind of turning on the cold water and having a cold shower, right? Really kind of doing a lot of the same things that cryotherapy would, obviously at a fraction of the cost. The nice thing about cryotherapy is it can happen instantly. It's way more pleasant on your body than it is jumping into an ice bath and sitting into that for 10 to 15 minutes. But it is something that through my first experience, I would recommend it to people. But I'd also say go out and do your own research. Talk to people who have experienced it themselves. Learn from them. Ask them some questions about if they find it useful or not. There's a lot of evidence out there that says, hey, cryotherapy can be great when you use it and incorporate it into a healthy lifestyle. And at the exact same time, there's evidence out there that says, doesn't really do anything. So kind of as it becomes something that you see more and more, it is something that is going to be exciting to see where the evidence takes us, the science takes us, and really kind of allows the data to speak for itself. So that's cryotherapy. I am going to recommend it to you. If you've got any questions, please reach out to me. Let me know what you think about cryotherapy. You can drop them in our chat. We are recording these podcast episodes live on YouTube. Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're jumping on there. We are recording them live. I will say as well, this week, as a commitment to this podcast and obviously our YouTube channel and the business that I have, but I have gone out and I just dropped the most money I could ever imagine spending on a computer. The computer that I have, I've used it for a couple of years now. It's produced some really good content for me, and I'm excited to see that computer kind of go somewhere else and have some other use for someone, and me get the latest and greatest computer, because I want to make these live streams as professional as possible. I find there's a lot of lag between the audio and video. I've tried to fix that for the last few months. We've run 2 episodes here for the live podcast, and I'm just not happy with the quality. So I'm excited to say that I made that solid investment in buying that new computer, buying that new laptop, and I'm going to really look forward to seeing what the returns on that investment are. For me, yes, but also for you getting to tune into our live episodes on YouTube. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, I'd really encourage you to jump on there. I record the podcast session, and then at the end of the episode, I have a little chat Q&A. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at that. And I really appreciate kind of you listening, you watching on YouTube, you listening to this podcast. If you want to do something to help me, please go ahead and rate the podcast. If you listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you're listening to this, please go ahead and give us a rating. And if you can drop that down below, we really appreciate that. So, hey, my name's Matt, and I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Hope that it challenged you, it encouraged you in some way to upgrade your mindset, your money, and more in the pursuit of living a great life. To learn more about what I do, head on over to YouTube and Instagram and search Greatness Every Day to find me there and give me some feedback. Let me know what you liked. Let me know what you didn't like. Let me know who and what you'd love to see me feature as a future topic, and anything else. Thanks for listening. Choose greatness every day, and I'll see you on the next episode.